Thank you for coming to join us today. We have what we think is a very exciting presentation. It's one that's been a few years in the making, and I'm certainly very excited that it's finally here. A few years back, author George R.R. Martin was approached with the idea of turning his series of sci-fi fantasy novels, A Song of Ice and Fire, into an episodic television series. And his response was that it couldn't be done. It was just too big, it was too epic, it was too cinematic. 2 Sundays ago, legions of anxious Game of Thrones fans tuned into HBO to find out what's going on in the latest installment between the Starks and the Lannisters. And clearly, HBO was able to bring this epic, grand cinematic experience to the home viewing audience. One of the key people behind this experience is producer Greg Spence.
Hey.
Now, Greg, before we kick things off, for the 3 people that aren't Game of Thrones fans, let's do a quick recap of what's been going on in seasons 1 and 2.
Lord Eddard Stark, I would name you the Hand of the King. I have a son, you have a daughter. We'll join our houses.
May I present Viserys and his sister Daenerys of House Targaryen.
I give him a queen, and he gives me an army.
He saw us.
Maester says the boy may live.
My dear brother, there are times you make me wonder whose side you're on.
You know how much I love my family.
There's great honor serving in the Night's Watch. The Starks have manned the wall for thousands of years. You might not have my name, but you are a Stark.
Jon Snow, Lord Commander Mormont has requested you for his personal steward.
He wants to groom you for command.
King Robert's bastards. Jon Arryn tracked them all down. Why? The king has no true-born sons. They're all your brother, Jaime's. When the king returns from his hunt, I'll tell him the truth.
Ned, we were hunting.
By the time Robert dies, it will be too late for the both of us.
What about Stannis? He's your older brother.
He's not a king. I am.
We have a new king now.
Your son has no claim to the throne.
Kill him! Kill all of them, I command him!
You're summoned to King's Landing to swear fealty to the new king.
I'll go to King's Landing, but not alone. Call the banners.
Kill him, Rob.
He's more used to us alive than dead.
So long as I am your king, treason shall never go unpunished. Bring me his head. No! Stop!
You will go to King's Landing and serve as Hand of the King in my stead.
Please let me go home.
Mother says I'm still to marry you, so you'll stay here and obey.
It's 1,000 leagues from here to the wall, and winter is coming.
We ride out beyond the wall tomorrow. Against the wildlings, the White Walkers, and whatever else is out there.
Drogo will have no use for dragon eggs in the Nightlands.
You don't understand.
Blood of my blood.
The Kingslayer. He escaped in the night.
How?
Sansa and Arya are captives in King's Landing. Returning him may buy life from my children.
Help me and my friends escape.
This a man cannot do. This is not part of our bargain. The girl and her friends will walk through the gate at midnight.
Where are my dragons?
I will take you to the House of the Undying, where I have put them.
Walder Frey is a dangerous man to cross.
I love her.
They burned everything.
Not everything, not you. Go north, to the wall, to Jon.
The Iron Throne is mine.
No one wants you for their king.
Look to your sins, Lord Renly. The night is dark and full of terrors.
If Renly wasn't a king, I wasn't a queen.
Do you want to be a queen?
I want to be the queen.
Man's just gonna march on the wall. One brother inside his army be worth 1,000 fighting against him. They'll never trust me. They might, if you do what needs to be done.
Come along, Jon Snow. Time to meet the king beyond the wall.
Welcome home, Daenerys Stormborn.
Dracarys.
When I sit the Iron Throne, you'll be my hand.
I pray I serve you well.
I expect you'll be the first crabber's son to wear the badge.
The battle is over. We have won.
Without you, this city faced certain defeat. The king won't give you any honors that we will not forget.
Sarah, I will gladly wed your sweet sister.
You said you saw my victory in the flames.
This war has just begun. You will be king.
It's Jon the Half-Hand.
She'll blast his wildlings.
Outstanding. I got to say, Greg, sitting here in front of a wall of speakers, I never noticed how brilliant the sound design was before, but it's really fantastic. I'd like to start off by asking you a question that no producer wants to answer, and that is, what do you do?
I mean, the short answer is as the producer in charge of post, I feel like it's my job to on one hand, empower our creatives, our directors of photography, our editors, our directors, with the tools they need and the confidence they need that something so big is going to come together well. And then to work with my team to just make sure that our technology is sound and our workflows are sound. I really do think it's true that you couldn't have made this show 10 years ago. I just knowing how expansive we are, how quickly we move things and people around, and how the digital technology has come up to support, has just grown exponentially. I'm obviously really pleased with how the show looks and sounds, and that we're able to do it, and grateful for all the people that make the stuff that we're able to use.
Well, speaking of technology and workflow and distribution, why don't you just give us a run-through of, I believe in season 1, it was strictly shot in Belfast and then edited in London, Belfast, and then finished in LA. How'd that work?
Our workflow's grown a little bit. See, actually, the original pilot we shot on film. Once we went back for series, we started shooting digitally. We've always shot the great majority of all the seasons in and around Belfast. Season 1, we also went to Malta. Season 2, we then obviously had the majority in Belfast. We added Croatia and Iceland. Season 3, it was Croatia, Morocco, and Iceland. And so it's, you know, and as the challenges have come at us, you know, we've just sort of responded. Whenever we, during production, we shoot on the Alexa, and we use the codecs as our capture and dailies system. For our editorial post, we have a 24 terabyte Unity with 11 seats, 3 picture editors, 3 assistants. Each of the assistants actually have 2 systems. They have a system they work on and a turnover system. Our colorist has access to the Unity for still store and reference, and using his room as a screening room. And then we have a seat for the codecs to you know, obviously deposit the media. Then when we get to later in post, our picture editors move from Belfast to London. Our visual effects team, executive producers, and myself break out, and we go to Los Angeles. We X-copy the Unity, so we have 24 terabyte Unity in the UK and 1 in Los Angeles that we keep in sync. And you know, and then there's a lot of iChat and a lot of Google Docs.
We were talking earlier, you know, before we came on stage about the sci-fi fantasy element of the show is amazing, but really it almost is secondary to how story-driven and how character-driven the show is. There's a lot of different plots going on at the same time, and none of them ever really feel like a backstory or a secondary story. You're always in the moment with these characters, and in post-production we talk a lot about media management, but I'm wondering, you know, in a show like this, how do you handle story management? I mean, even though in a single episode there might be a lot of, you know, 3 different set stories, how do you deal with that in post?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, obviously David Benioff, Dan Weiss are incredibly talented writers, and they write the great majority of the material. George R. Martin writes the script, and they do a good job of writing the stories in a tight way. However, it is not uncommon at all, once we get in post, to switch them around a little bit, because we shoot it like a 10-hour feature. We begin shooting July 8th. And we'll shoot across all 10 episodes. We don't usually shoot anything out until October. So fortunately, HBO is very patient and has a lot of confidence in us, and we overwhelm them with dailies. But they're shooting for a long, long, long time, and then suddenly November comes, and we go, hey, you know, we've got 10 episodes here. And often at that point, when you're looking at the individual stories, you'll discover that a certain scene or a certain storyline gets flopped from, you know, between the episode and the one next to it, and you know, and it's obviously a tremendously creative process, and it's a lot of fun, you know, and our writer showrunners, you know, who are involved in every single step, are generally very open-minded and you know, about about that, and they're also just incredibly smart. So it's often it's their idea when they go, you know what, it's like this Danny scene might be better in episode 5, and you kind of go, wow, cool.
It's nice to have that creative freedom. There was obviously a tremendous amount of buzz around the premiere of season 3, and when you start on a show and it's a new show, I don't want to say there's no expectations, but you're going into it with with fresh eyes, and nobody knows what's coming. And now, the first set of challenges. Okay, you're creating a show and you're putting a show on a network where you have to stand aside, some other really big shows, Boardwalk Empire, True Blood, Network, and deliver a quality, like the word I keep using is cinematic experience every week. Well, now you have this show that is just blown up to the point where it's being referenced as the most important show on television. Does that? No, I saw it. It's true.
Wow.
Does that add?
Now I'm nervous.
No, please don't be. You're doing fine. Does that add another extra element of pressure, or does it force you to up your game when you know that there's that many more people watching?
Well, I think that there were definitely challenges with season 1 because we shot a pilot and we didn't ever actually even finish it. We got it close enough to where we showed it to HBO and they said, hey, you know what? We believe that you guys have something here. So we went back to Belfast to shoot for 6 months, and we never really fully corrected an episode. We'd never really fully scored an episode. So the things that you're used to having, as we know this is how the show sounds, this is how we know the show looks, weren't ever fully worked out. And so there was a lot of work in season 1, kind of establishing the palette and the look of the show and the sound of the show so everybody recognizes sort of whose story they're in and how those things feel. In terms of where we go from here, George's books just keep being more and more and more ambitious. And the production team, Bernie and Chris and Lisa Mack, who are our core production producers, are just extraordinary, and somehow they manage to keep doing it. I mean, I feel like as a post-producer, no matter how big the problem gets, you always have you're not standing in the rain. At least you've got a black leather couch and a nice monitor there to solve it. What they go through with the countries and the people and the mud and the weather is really incredible. And yet you see it on screen. It's something that I said in earlier is that all of the weather that people see in the show, the wind and the snow and the rain and the muck is almost all real. We never have to make any of that stuff. Sometimes you have to supplement it if you're shooting and it becomes inconsistent. But and so what what our physical production crew does is amazing, and I'm just totally grateful for it because you can't fake it. I mean, it just feels really real, and that helps sell the fantasy element.
Well, I think we have a short clip that really supports what you're just saying. And before we roll it, I was really taken aback when I saw it that A, how arduous production really can be, and how post-production is where it's at. And B, how come the director is the only one in this clip who looks like he's just fresh as a daisy and isn't bothered by anything at all? So let's take a look at the Iceland clip if we could.
We are shooting in Iceland. It was important to shoot here because here's where you get this. Sometimes 5 or 6 times a day.
It was very exciting to know that we were coming back for season 3.
It's the perfect location for Beyond the Wall.
The landscape is just like, it's so otherworldly. It's like you're on a different planet.
Yesterday we were shooting in a blizzard, so we couldn't see how beautiful it was.
It just makes such a huge difference coming to a place where it's actually this cold and it's actually snowing like this. And the actors, when they're huddling up for warmth, they really did need to get close to get warm.
When you see people's breath, you're really seeing people's breath. When you see icicles coming out of their mustaches and beards, it's real icicles.
Yes, it's cold, but it's so incredibly beautiful and untouched. It's what you think it is times 10.
It's harsh weather conditions. It's not easy to shoot here, but the country's so beautiful that it makes it such a pleasure to come to.
There's about 5 hours of daylight, so you can imagine it's a lot of pressure to get a lot of shots.
It's a lot of work to schedule everything and figure out how to get all the equipment here and how we can afford it all. But at the end of the day, we'd rather spend the money on the locations rather than on the VFX. It just makes everything more real.
I don't think you could recreate this scenery on a green screen or on a backlot. There's nothing like it.
To be able to come to a place and just be in it makes the world seem so vast and immense, and that's what we needed to make this show work.
When the long night comes, north of the wall becomes the kingdom of the dead.
So really, there's nothing wrong with the black leather couch in the edit room, right? I mean, that looked...
I actually happened to be there that day, but...
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, it's Iceland. It really is spectacular. Everybody should go to Iceland if you're given the opportunity.
So clearly the looks of the landscapes are a very important part of selling the show and making it real and making it feel just that much more impactful than doing visual effects solely throughout. Was that a determination you made early on that we're going to have to do production wherever we have to do it, as opposed to making this work digitally all the time in editorial?
I think so. I mean, for the reasons that we just discussed, because if you're really there, it helps your cast. It helps that there's a realism to the snow and the wind and the mud, and it is really true. While visual effects can do amazing things, the absolute most real thing you can ever do is actually photograph it. I think a lot of what people see in Game of Thrones, they assume are visual effects, and they're actually mostly in camera with a little bit of visual effects kind of sweetening to them. I don't know, for anybody who knows the show might know that the harbor at Pike, when a character Theon comes in, and he rows into this really funky little harbor with a little smokehouse. And I remember sitting in the dailies room, and it's out on the north coast in Northern Ireland. It's really a funky little harbor. And that came in, and we popped it up in the colorist room, and I looked at it, and it's like, well, everybody's just going to swear that's a matte painting. And everybody does. And I've actually had visual effects people comment on it, and at the end of the day, we put two little boats, like way in the background, and all of the rest of it is in camera. And that happens obviously a lot with the Iceland stuff, the north of the wall. It's largely distant mountains and things. And the dragons are real. We shoot in Ireland.
You've got to go to Ireland.
We could never afford those dragons.
U.S. dragon rates are way too high.
Yeah.
Well, but it's probably a good time to take a look at some of these visual effects, because clearly it's not all practical location stuff, and you have to go into the computers and make some magic happen there. Why don't we roll the visual effects loop, and just we'll keep the volume potted down, and we'll just comment as you see fit. I think what you were talking about is a lot of times having to take practical elements and overlay some pretty cool visual effects on top of that.
Yeah. Well, actually, now this reel is going to show all the really ambitious stuff. Those are our wolves that we shoot in Los Angeles months after we shoot the rest of the scene. We shoot them on a green stage. All of this is Croatia, and then we add on to create King's Landing. This is a quarry in Croatia, and often what happens is you pick a location to make it into a visual effect, and the VFX guys look at it and they decide to just make it all 3D anyway.
Well, there you go.
Pixamundo does our dragons. They're extraordinarily successful, and we're very grateful to them for that work. So all of this is Northern Ireland, and we, obviously always look for locations where the foreground elements and some of the things that are most difficult to do with visual effects are done in camera, because the further away stuff is, the easier it is to believe. It's also good if you can mix elements, create stuff a little bit in the foreground and a lot in the background, or vice versa.
And how many passes will you go through for a lot of these elements?
Oh, that's hard to say.
Okay. Well, I counted three right there.
Usually what you do is you do a lot of takes thinking you're going to get it in one, and once you see the final visual effects work, you realize that they've really, really torn every little element apart and used the best of each of the sections. This is some of the stuff from the big battle last season. Most of the water is CG, but the bows and the places where the boats meet the water, we find that it's better to shoot an element.
So there's an example of something you break down that's just pretty much all digital.
Yes, this stuff. I mean, it's interesting because there's a quarry in Northern Ireland that has that water in it, and we built the set to have this relationship, and then Pixamundo took all the real water out. And we burned a couple of sails for elements, but all that burning stuff is largely either created by Pixo or found. One of the things that I've noticed in the last 10 years of working in post, it's related to visual effects, is our visual effects supervisors spend so much time at the Avid with the VFX editor now, they build versions of these shots. Sometimes our guy this season, sometimes will have 40 layers that he mixes down. And what he and the VFX soup are actually delivering to the VFX house isn't like the idea that it used to be. It used to be you did temps to give them an idea. It's often now so close that you're just saying, you know what, this is what we want to do. If you could have your compositors just rub the rough edges off it and put some Atmos in so it works.
You make it sound so simple.
Because it's true. It's not just an Avid plug. That the amount of work you guys have done on that is remarkable, and it's really, really central to being able to express both to our producers and our creatives in the studio what we want to do. But then you can actually turn around to the visual effects house, and with a show like this, where we have now a large collection of elements of horses and smoke and people and peasants from each of the kingdoms that we've shot and collected over seasons, we can really put a lot of that stuff together in a way that gets the work, 65, 70% there, of the way there.
As the show seems to get, bigger and bigger and bigger, are you really tied to any sort of season in delivering to HBO, or could the production cycle get even longer? I mean, how have you looked at it that way?
That's out of my area of expertise.
Okay.
When HBO does an extraordinary job marketing the show, getting awareness up, it's a remarkable machine.
Yeah.
So it's not mine to question. It does take us exactly 52 weeks to make, or more, to make a season, because we're already scouting season 4 now. We have some scripts in. There's a production office open in Belfast, and here in LA, we're still delivering the back 5. So I can usually manage to deliver episode 10. And spend a week or two before I get on the plane and go back.
Something like production design, that seems to play a huge role in this show. Does that really start before? How far in advance of production does that start? Is that within the 52-week scope, or is that even further back?
I think it's ongoing. It sort of has its own process. Obviously, Gemma Jackson is our production designer, very, very talented woman, had a relationship with HBO prior to the show. And she starts working with her concept artists, and the VFX team does the same, and that now they've kind of fused. So that anytime anything appears in the outline, those two departments start working on concept art right away. And concept art is a remarkably helpful tool to something like this, because you can know people well, you can work closely together, you can all sit around and describe a green frog, but unless you have a picture of a green frog, nobody is really talking about the same thing. And that's something we've learned. It was I'd never used a lot of concept art on a show, and this one we tend to be increasing the amount of concept art and the amount of previs we do all the time.
So we opened talking about, or at least commenting on the audio and the sound mixing and sound design. What's the process in place for that? What kind of tools, and how does that fit into the overall editorial workflow?
I think like most shows, our assistant editors and our editors do as much work as they can in the offline, trying to give an idea of what things are going to sound like. And obviously, again, one of the benefits of going year over year with the show is we're establishing a library, not only of our music, but of all of our sounds and sound effects and ambiences and backgrounds for different worlds. Tadeo in Los Angeles does our sound, and obviously in terms of, they use the common predominant workflow, which is Pro Tools. We mix the show on a DigiDesign, which is the smaller of the icon boards, right?
Okay.
There's a product.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I owe you one.
And they're actually, again, the most important thing I think are the people. I mean, this year we have I really enjoyed working with our sound designer last year, Peter Brown. Very talented guy who stepped out of his life in features to work for us, but I knew we could only have him for a year. This year we have a woman named Paula Fairfield, and it's really fun because Paula was able to take Peter's really great, for example, dragon sounds. They're kind of iconic sounds, I think. And the dragons are a lot bigger this year. And, you know, and so Paula sourced some really incredible stuff for how they sound in episode 1, and they've got a lot of great stuff this season. And you know, it's using the tools we have, you know, to support the creative. Paula comes up with great stuff. She works out of her studio, and I mean, and she actually reaches far to really far off libraries to find things.
Well, it all comes together to make a truly remarkable show, and I can't thank you enough for being with us here today. Please, everybody, a round of applause for Mr. Greg Spence.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And don't forget to tune in Sunday nights at 9 o'clock on HBO to see how this all plays out. Thank you, everybody.